Hello, welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to study operating systems. We are going to study the different types of software, and then we will discuss the functions of an operating system. We're also going to study different types of operating system and some of the utility programs. So this shows you a brief categories of the softwares. And basically, we have the application software and the system software. So for the system software, we have the operating system and the utility software. And inside of the operating system, we have a kernel, which is the most important part. And except the kernel, we have shell and some other programs, like the graphical user interface. Application software is written to address our specific needs, like the office software, the email software, some movie editors, some computer-aided design softwares, etc. System software consists of the programs that control or maintain the operations of the computer and its devices. It provides the tools and environment in which the application software can be created and run. The utility software are those programs that can help you to organize your system or to manage your resources, but those are not part of the operating system. The operating system is also a software, but the main function of the operating system is to manage the hardware resources of the computer. It can provide an environment to run the user's program. The kernel is the key part of the operating system. It manages computer resources such as memory, processor, input and output devices. The shell provides an interface through which a human can interact with the computer. This figure shows you the relationship between the users, some softwares, and the operating system and the hardware. So usually the human users can interact with their application software, and sometimes the user will also use the function provided by the operating system. And of course, the application software need to communicate with the operating system to allocate some hardware resources like the hard disk, memory, or processor. And the operating system will talk to the hardware directly so that to manage the hardware resources. And there are also some system level softwares that operating system can interact with, such as the virtual machine manager. This also shows you the different layers of the softwares. So we have the human users, and the human users will talk to the operating system by using some program interface. And this layer is the user programs. The user's program will talk to the operating system by calling the interface provided by the operating system. We call this system calls. And then we have the operating system layer, and the operating system will talk to the hardware by using the hardware interface. So here we have a definition of the operating system. An operating system is the software that controls the overall operation of computer. It provides the means by which a user can store and retrieve files, provides the interface by which a user can request and execute of programs, and provides the environment necessary to execute the programs requested. So overall, the operating system is the main controller of the whole computer system. So all of the user program has to run on top of the operating system. Now let's look at the brief history of the operating system. So basically we have the batch processing systems, and then we have the interactive processing systems, and then we have the time sharing and the multitasking systems. Nowadays we have the multiprocessor machines. So for this type of machines, we have to use the server operating system, which is different from the operating system for the personal computers. Because usually for the personal computers, we only have one CPU, but for the servers, it's pretty common to have multiple CPUs. So the operating systems running in the servers are also different from the operating system running in the personal computers. So before we have the operating system, we actually run the program directly on the hardware. So the execution of each program is called a job. So the job was handled as an isolated activity, meaning that one job will occupy the whole computer. So the computer can only execute one job at a time. So during this time, the computers are not shareable. So if one user wants to use the computer, they have to make the reservation first. And before they can run their program, they need to prepare a lot. For example, they need to prepare their program and to input their program into the machine, and then they can run the program. So the first type of operating system is called the batch processing system. And in the batch processing system, we have one human operator who is responsible for manage the jobs. So we have a group of jobs, and the operator will manage the jobs into batches. And the jobs will not go into the computer one by one. They will actually go into the computer batch by batch. So for each of the batch, it including several jobs. This system is designed to improve the utility of the system. But the disadvantage of this type of system is that during the execution of the batches, the users cannot interact with their jobs. So for example, if the program needs some input from the user, so this is not possible for this type of operating system. So trying to test or verify the correctness of the program is not easy in this type of system. Users need to wait for a long time for the system to finish all the jobs in the batch. To implement a batch processing system is actually easy. What we need to do is to implement a queue. So it's actually a queuing system. You can input the jobs into the queue so that the jobs will be submitted to the queue, and it will be waiting in the queue until the job that is in execution finished. So the major drawback of this batch processing system is that users cannot interact with the job during the execution of the job. So after the batch processing system, we have another type of system is called the interactive processing. So in this type of system, the users can interact with the job during the execution of the program. For example, user can provide some input or some output can be generated by the program during the execution. By using the interactive processing technique, the users can get rapid response from the computer. But because the computers were very expensive during that time, it's not very efficient to allow only one user to use the computer. So the time-sharing system is designed to allow multiple users to interact with the computer at the same time. So in this case, we have to run multiple programs at the same time. And the technology we use is called multiprogramming. Multiprogramming allows multiple processes to be active at once. So the processes is a new concept, and we are going to talk about this concept later. But for now, you can think the process is just the program. So which will give rise to the ability for the programmers to interact with the computer system directly while still sharing the resources. So this is a very important technique, multiprogramming. So by using the multiprogramming, we can load multiple programs into the main memory, and then we can run the multiple programs on the single CPU. But of course, we cannot run multiple programs on the single CPU simultaneously, because one CPU can only run one program at a time. So how are we going to share the CPU? We use the time-sharing technology. So we split the CPU time into small intervals, and the execution of each program is restricted to only one interval at a time. So this tells you how the time sharing works. So we have only one computer, but we can have multiple users log into the computer, and the users will share the computer. So suppose this is the CPU time. We can split the CPU time into small intervals. So for this interval, we're going to assign the CPU time to this user, And for the next interval, we're going to assign it to the next user. So this is called the time sharing. Because the CPU are running very fast, so from the user's point of view, all of them feels like their program is running at the same time. But actually, the programs are running alternatively.